With Destiny 2's Lightfall just around the corner, I really wanted to take a quick moment to talk about some of the things that were good and some of the things that were bad, and where I think Bungie can start to improve, what's going to be the issues going into next year. Let's start off on the really obvious good point, and that's going to be the Witch Queen campaign. That was fire. The addition of the Legend or the Master difficulty option with the campaign was such a welcome option, and I gotta say, looking back on it, it was some of the best content I played in Destiny. Going through with my mate Sky with Diamonds, trying to figure out how we were going to make it through an encounter without upgrading our weapons from the previous year's content, and get through with the greens and the blues that we had been dropping from the campaign. It was so much fun. It was the first time in a long time that we felt like we were back at the beginning in sort of a New Light capacity, but I don't want to say New Light because that is a total shit show that we're not even going to jump into. I want to talk about things like the 4-season content releases and the activities that we were doing during those time periods. With Season of the Risen right at the beginning, that was pretty good. It was tied into the campaign of Witch Queen, and I didn't really have a problem with what that content was because it felt like it was pared back just enough so people could still continue on playing through the campaign if they were having trouble getting through. During this season, it really felt like Bungie was starting to understand that not every player out there is a full-time Destiny streamer player, and not everybody's got the time to get through the campaign. I remember our group, we got up to Southern, the final encounter, in the first 2 days of the campaign being released, and then it took us another 10-ish days to get our schedules aligned again so that we could get in there and beat her. And that is not including the fact that we really struggled to beat her, so that really added to some time as well. She was a tough final encounter, but that was all a good thing. All of that season was great. Season of the Risen was very clearly meant to be a trial phase for what Arc 3.0 was going to look like, how that was going to affect Guardians, what you get from your aspects, etc. And it was all a really good time. Moving straight off that, we went into Season of the Haunted, which was not quite as good a time. Season of the Haunted was a trouble kid. It was the middle child of any family. It didn't really know where it wanted to be and why it wanted to be there. And we had this terrible, absolutely soul-draining content activity where you had to go through those 3 haunted activities one after another, and just doing one of them would take 25 minutes. They were just tedious, they were endless, and you couldn't even load into these with other people immediately. Yes, they had the Castellum drop, and then they had the drop that was specifically for this activity that you could load into, but it was a shot in the dark if you were going to land in an area that was completely empty or had a couple of people in it, and it didn't work, and it just became totally tedious. For me, getting the Reaper Seal title was one of the worst experiences in Destiny 2, and I felt forced to my chair and that I had to play it. By the end, getting the 50 completes, I would easily have said that I had played hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of this activity and gotten nothing out of it except a headache and a good decent amount of time spent on Netflix with Destiny on mute while I was doing it. What was good about that season was the release of the new dungeon, Duality. Duality is some of the most fun and the least fun I've had in Destiny as well. A new dungeon is always welcome. It's always such a great middle ground between a GM and a raid, and something that you can do with mates and you can figure out and go through doing the puzzle aspects to it, but it's also something you can grind at and try and do solo. Now, I am one of those people who has made it through solo, but that was the part of it that was really bad because Duality came with its fair share of problems, and if you've played it at all, you will know exactly what I'm talking about, and it's the bugs. The amount of times you are going to die when you are doing exactly what the game wanted you to do by traveling through the different versions of the nightmare and reality, and you just die once you travel through because the game didn't know how to handle that. That was not acceptable and it didn't get fixed. To this day, I still get nervous when I'm trying to run a pinnacle checkpoint. I'm nervous about teleporting because I don't know if I'm just going to die for no reason. It wasn't acceptable. People wanted to complete this solo as quickly as possible because there were challenges tied behind the seal for completing it solo. That's great. We also had classy restorations through Solar 3.0 and through the artifact. This was the time we were going to get it done. Resilience was popping off. Everybody was figuring that out. We had to go. But it was bugged and it didn't get fixed. And this is really the big problem with where Destiny is. When there's an issue, it doesn't get fixed. And when things are working fine, it doesn't get improved upon. There's 2 points I want to make on that. The first point is, to this day, if I do a Wellspring attack, there are several banner drops during Wellspring that if I manage to drop the banner and it actually spawns for other players, I will cheer. We are just shy of a year on from Wellsprings being released, and they still haven't fixed the banner drops. That's not acceptable. It's clear that there's a problem there. People have complained about it, and Bungie's done nothing about it. The next point on it is, let's talk about the yearly events. Things like the Dawning or Festival of the Lost. Those are carbon copies of the content that we had last year. They are the exact same event. Perhaps they've added one extra map to that event, but it's not better. It works fine enough. That doesn't mean it can't now be improved, Bungie. You had mistakes in here. It still needs improving. You can still add more to it or come up with a totally new idea. But that's the problem. That's what's happening with Destiny that we have issues with. You go off those sorts of events and then you go into something like Season of the Plunder. And I think myself, much like many other players who were playing Destiny during Season of the Plunder, sure, Arc 3.0 is great. Boy, Season of the Plunder was flippin' boring. I almost totally stopped playing the game during that time period because the activities they were releasing were just not enjoyable anymore. And going for those ruffian kills where you're trying to force the spawns and play against the objective to ensure that the ruffian will spawn. And to do that, you have to wait 3 minutes instead of banking the moats. It's just not thought through. Now we're at the end of Season of the Serif, and I gotta say, I find it to be a pretty inoffensive season. I wouldn't call it the best season I've ever done. I wouldn't call it the worst season I've ever done. We did get another dungeon with the Spire, which has been a lot of fun, but exceptionally difficult. But I wouldn't call it the grand fanfare to see the Witch Queen off that I think Destiny should have made it to be. You know, we're meant to be at this point where we're getting hyped up for Lightfall, and we're just not feeling that. Right now I am exceptionally excited, but I'm excited on my own hype, on my own interest in the game. There's nothing at the moment that would make me jump into Lightfall if I wasn't already a Destiny 2 player. So basically, look, I wanted to keep this really short. I didn't want to bang on about this for ages, but the key is, to me, is that Destiny's doing a great job getting content out, but they're doing a terrible job of looking at what it is that they're putting out, why it is that they're putting it out, and what can be improved. Take the time to read the TWABs that are going out, and take the time to watch the Twitter and see the things that are going wrong. You'll quickly realize that there's a lot in here that I haven't even begun to talk about, that Bungie needs to be doing a lot better job of quickly working through, fixing, and updating. But look, that's all I had to talk about today. I wanted to keep it really fast. I hope you enjoyed. I'm curious if you agree or disagree. We could have a good conversation about this one. That's it. I'll see you guys later.